Hi, and welcome to Live at Epiphan. This is episode 10, which is going to be an interesting episode. It's a milestone for us. I'm George.
I'm Dan.
And today's topic, we're going to be featuring an interview talking about building live content strategy and how various different pieces and live streaming in general is becoming a very important tool in the toolbox of companies and individuals and all those various pieces. Of course, as usual, submit any questions and comments you have in the chat, or email us live at epiphan.com with any future suggestions or questions, and we'd be happy to answer those. Sort of jumping right into it, we did a little bit of creative rewiring here in the studio to bring our guest in by Skype. So I'll hand it over to Dan and jump into our interview with Peter.
Yeah, so why don't we go ahead and we'll add Peter to the Live at Epiphan studio. Peter, do we have you there? Hello.
Hi, great to see you.
Hey, so this is Peter Gosselin. He's actually joining us from the Big Apple, and by day, Peter is a creative director at a top 10 ad agency, but in his own time, he's actually a hobbyist and an enthusiast who hosts an ever-growing YouTube channel and community. So, Peter, thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm a big fan of Epiphan, as you know, so happy to be here.
Well, we're a big fan of your awesome mechanical keyboard YouTube channel. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit in a while, but why don't we first start with our main topic today, and that is building a live content strategy. So I was actually doing a little bit of tinkering around Googling yesterday, and I decided to check out the Google Trends website, and I just typed in the term live stream and discovered that, in fact, over the last 2 years, the relevance of the term live stream has increased by 500% on YouTube. And on Google as well, Google searches, it's like a hockey stick graph. Yeah. In the last 2 years, this term has grown exponentially. So I'm wondering, Peter, maybe you could give us some insight as to what has contributed to this increased awareness of live streaming and maybe how you see this trend continuing.
Sure. First I'll talk about it as a creative director in advertising. I'll talk about what it means for brands. And the first thing that you can really say about live streaming is it gives the audience the chance to interact. I know right now we're live on YouTube and on Facebook, and those both have comment windows where people can talk and ask questions live. And that point of interaction, I think, is a really big part of the reason that live streaming is growing as quickly as it is. I think today, the high production value canned responses are something that big corporations typically did, but now more and more people want to feel that connection with the brand. They want to feel that direct interaction. And so I think that's part of the reason that it's growing. It's also growing for individual influencers because it's a better way for them to connect to their audience, but it's part of the same thing, having the ability for the audience to talk one-to-one and realize that on the other side that there's actually a human there. That really helps engagement, that really helps brands to grow. So I think that's why it's growing now and will continue.
Oh, that's a great point. And, as audience tendencies evolve and as brands are always searching to adapt and trying to find ways to adapt to new and emerging technologies, I'm wondering maybe you could speak to some of the direct benefits of live streaming over more traditional types of media.
Sure. The example was in it right there, saying the ability to live stream and communicate one-on-one with your audience is that real technological advantage. And just to give you an example of that, just kind of a random example might be somebody who's making a considered purchase, like a car. They're just about to buy the car, but they're not sure if they can understand how the dashboard works. So the friction point for them, in this extremely expensive, this really well thought out purchase is one small bit about how the dashboard works. And so what a live stream enables the audience to do is to interact on that one-to-one basis and say, I do have a question about that. There is something that if I just knew that, everything would be fine. And that, in a big way really gives the live streamers an advantage. Compared to somebody who just goes out, say, with 60-second or 30-second commercials that really broadcasts at the audience as opposed to interacts with them. And like I say, I see that every day in my business. I see that you guys are doing it, of course. As Epiphan is doing this, it very much is an example of a brand that's doing it. You guys, of course, are at the forefront of it because you manufacture the equipment it helps you do it, but at the same time, you're going to learn from your audience. They're going to have questions and wonder things about Epiphan products, and you'll be able to help them one-on-one and also develop your brand and your products based on that.
You know, another thing, George and I have been talking about this, but just having the ability for us to engage with our customers and learn from them and understand the ways that they're I know you're speaking with our customers all the time, George.
Well, exactly. And we do live streaming product demonstrations pretty much a daily basis, multiple times a day, to do exactly what you mentioned, where you need to just show that extra piece that's under the hood that maybe isn't understood in the usual marketing material. Now, we do that obviously in a one-on-one stream environment, but there's no reason that we can't do that in these types of environments. And that was one of the purposes of us starting this show, was to try and explore that a little bit and talk about all the other technical topics we've covered in the other episodes: lighting, cameras, all those other pieces.
Resource for the community as much as you will be for the potential purchasers of your products. And that's not just true for Epiphan, that's true for every company, every brand that exists out there. Exactly that. In the car example, BMW, Ford, Jaguar, they'll all benefit from having those relationships with their audience and having that back and forth. I'm just using cars as an example. I don't personally currently work in the car industry, but just as a random example, it could be any industry.
Yeah, definitely high-tech companies tend to be more in the forefront of that. Car companies tend to be a little slow on the uptake sometimes. But yeah, it is a great example because that represents a significant investment that people take time to consider. But in this day and age, I mean, even technology is becoming a significant investment for a lot of people. And so, making sure that they fully understand those steps. So
definitely.
Absolutely.
So Peter, as I mentioned before, you're an avid YouTuber. YouTube creator, and you have a growing audience. We've been watching some of your streams, and they're actually quite entertaining and informative. Maybe you could tell us a bit about sort of your personal experience with live streaming and anything interesting that you've learned through that process.
I mean, I've learned an absolute ton. So it's difficult to start with what I've learned because learning both to interact with the audience and understanding what they like about live content as opposed to my standard content or the kind of 2-minute videos that I release weekly. Just the thing that I didn't realize, I suppose the biggest revelation for me was that my audience likes me to fail. I didn't really understand that before. Sorry, I look like I've frozen. Have I frozen for you guys?
Yeah, it was saying that good timing. We're talking about things failing in the middle of a live stream, and of course Skype's going to give us a hiccup.
Stuff that succeeds the first time, it's as things break, they want to understand your problem solving skills for figuring that out. And like I say, I didn't get that. To me, it was like, oh, I've made a mistake, my audience is going to hate this one, and then I go on half an hour trying to figure out how to fix it. For me personally, discovering that the audience was so intrigued with that, and that would then go on to be one of my most viewed videos, really showed me that it's those points of friction that define what the audience is looking for.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. I think we couldn't have asked for better timing there to provide that exact example, right? And most people would panic and, I got to but no, just turn the camera off, turn it back on, and you're back in business, right?
Again, I because I've been doing live streaming recently, I don't want to say that I know what to do, but look, I didn't panic. I just kept the show going. How many times I've had the microphone muted while I've been live with the audience? I mean, it happens all the time. And again, those mistakes reveal me as a person rather than just kind of a talking head. And as a person, I'm able to better engage with my audience. In advertising terms, I'm what's called a micro influencer because I have a very niche audience. I don't yet, hopefully one day I will. I don't yet have, the 1 million subscribers or more. I'm not really looking for that type of audience, at least not at the moment. I'm being very specific, and in that very small, narrow cut, I'm trying to own as much of it as I can and be able to interact with my audience as much as I possibly can.
Sure, and it definitely makes you more relatable as well, so that they can feel like they know who you are more personally. Mm-hmm. And it sort of brings up another interesting point that I wanted to ask you about, and maybe in your professional career you could you could provide some insight as well. But, in terms of brands and companies who are maybe interested in live stream, but are perhaps maybe hesitant because of some of the risks or some of the unknowns, are there any unique challenges to live streaming or any risks that might cause brands to hesitate? And if so, how can those risks be mitigated?
Well, expect to fail. Expect things to go wrong because they will. And that is a major mind shift. You've got to imagine a lot of the brands that I work on are multi-million or even multi-billion-dollar industry. They're blue chip companies. And for them to think about a piece of content that they would produce that could be inherently flawed is a major mind shift for them. So, the first thing is to be able to convince them that that's okay. And it's not just that that's okay. That's actually the benefit of it. The more that they see you fail and the more that they understand that there's people behind this, the better off your brand will be. So that's I think the first major hurdle that most brands need to overcome. And it's certainly true in my day-to-day life. What they like to do is they like to buy something and understand exactly the return on investment, take that ROI and follow the thread of how much is it going to cost to start this up and how long will it last. And, they like everything to be calculated. And of course, in a live environment where the possibilities of cameras failing or people going mute or worse, if this table suddenly collapsed, who knows, what could go wrong. But again, in that, there's that purity, that honesty that
it's so hard to find everywhere else.
Yeah, exactly. And, wouldn't you love to see that? As audience members, wouldn't you love to see your favorite brands have the president or whatever the top, the CEO of their company talk to you about what it means to them to make this product? Imagine if Phil Knight was sat down and talking about innovations at Nike. I mean, of course we'd tune in. Of course we would. That's just so interesting and engaging. So again, the brands need to change that perception about what it's okay to fail at and why failing is okay. And again, it's certainly a tough sell, and it's been a tough sell for me for as long as I've been doing it and forevermore.
Well, I guess a follow-up to that is part of that the fact that any of us who've played with live streaming a little bit, either as a hobby or in a professional career, there's, you can do it on the extreme cheap, and you can do it at the extreme expense of, full Hollywood studio style stuff. And I guess most people probably operate somewhere in between. And maybe that's part of the risk that people are unsure of is, how far on that scale do you go, right? Do you do it so cheap that you just don't get the quality out of it? Do you do it so expensive that you blew your budget and you're not sure what you gained, without just going to the traditional advertising 30-second spots, that sort of thing?
You're going to learn as you go along the way. So it's difficult to say you should put all your money up front. You should go top end right from the start because there's so much to learn about the progression from where you are now to where you want to ultimately be. So again, exactly that. It's like the progression and understanding that at each grade along the way that we're going to continue to hone, continue to develop, continue to improve. At least that's what I'm doing personally. That's what I assume you guys are doing at Epiphan, and it's certainly what I'm encouraging my clients to do as well.
So speaking of improvement and the continual evolution of the content, maybe you could sort of tell us about your audience and your show. What are some of the best practices? I'm not sure how many episodes you've done now. I'm sure it's been probably hundreds of hours of live streamed content. So yeah, maybe you could just share with us some of your best practices and, if you have any tips or quick tips that you could share.
Let's geek out for a second and talk about setup. That's what the question is.
Yeah, okay. So you guys have kind of a rare view in that I'm on Skype and I'm reversed to the way that I normally am. So behind me is my desk, and you can see, don't forget, I live in Manhattan in New York, so I have one of the smallest possible spaces that you can imagine. And I really am trying to cram as much in as I can. So I've got just a 30-inch stainless steel desk. Now, I bought the stainless steel desk because I thought it looked cool and clean, but of course that came with so many technical challenges that I had to build my system in order to incorporate those technical challenges. But overhead, I've got I don't think you can quite see it, but I've got a handy cam there. It's a Sony 1080p video camera, and that's of course going to my Epiphan AVIO HD. I've also got, so I've got a total of 5 cameras, and those include webcams, but that's the first one. The second one I call my action cam, which is here. It's a DSLR. It's a Nikon. I've also got 3 webcams. I've got one that always is on my face. I've got another one that's over in the chat window, so when I look at it, it's like, you know, a little bit off to the side. And then I've got what's probably the coolest part of my show, which is I've got a camera mounted on my soldering iron. So a lot of the stuff that I do is it's very like technical, step-by-step, showing people how to make these kits that I sell with my small business. And so by mounting a webcam directly on the soldering iron, I get a real close-up view of exactly how this is supposed to work. And of course it looks really cool too. And then on top of that, so that's my kind of camera 1 setup, even though there's 5 cameras. Then I've got a second camera off to the side, which is another handy cam from Sony. And that is plugged into my X1, also from Epiphan. And then I have this over to the other side. It's a little bit tricky to see, especially with that reflective background there, but that's a Raspberry Pi, a camera 3 that I've got with no audio. On top of that, there's my mic and the camera 2 mic. What else can you see? You can see my tower down there. Audio. I mean, it's very small. I've got a dual monitor setup, even though you can see that my keyboard and monitor are actually abstracted from my desk just to give me a bit more space. But that is my best effort, to have as much as I can packed into as small a space as I possibly can.
I must say it's quite incredible how much gear you've managed to pack into such a small area. Now, for someone who maybe is just starting out and doesn't know where to begin, I mean, not everyone's going to be using 5 cameras, right?
A webcam on my Mac laptop, and I had a second webcam that I was using. It's just over there. It's a Logitech. It's got a resolution of 640 by 480. So again, don't try to be perfect when you start, at least not doing what I do. Just learn along the way. It's okay. People come back for the content. They don't come back for the production value, but the production value helps. The production value helps the audience to stay engaged. It helps them to keep coming back. But the initial start, I mean, it really couldn't have been any cheaper. And then over time, I've added, and I've been in a very fortunate position where my audience is happy to contribute and help me to continue developing. And I'm still developing. This current setup's a 1080p setup, but this is my Lumix FZ1000 that I'm just about to get set up, and that's a 4K camera. And of course, I've got my Epiphan 4K. It's just off screen down here, but I've got the capture card ready to go. So, I'm building up. I haven't integrated it into the system yet, but it's coming. It's the same thing. I'm going to add a 4K webcam to my soldering iron. I'm building up. I'm progressing, and as I do it, I'm improving each show, and I'm learning new things and learning how better to interact with my audience. So it's
and you're bringing the audience along for the ride with you, which I think I've noticed in your streams, and I'm sure they appreciate that. And I've even seen that they actually make donations to help you upgrade the setup and increase the production value.
I mean, I'm very fortunate for my audience. They're really cool people, and they're enthusiasts, and they come week after week to hang out and check out the show. And in a lot of ways, that's what it is. I'm kind of hanging out with the people that I know who are also interested in the stuff that I do. And again, building that audience, building that relationship. I'm not an actor. I certainly am not an actor. So, when they're engaging with me and I'm answering questions, I'm doing it as me. This is me itself. So the brand of Ski with Pete is just me. It's just kind of what I do. So again, that for the audience, at least in the last 10 years, that's brand new. That didn't exist 10 or 15 years ago. All that you got was what TV kind of gave you, and now to be able to interact and learn about people and the weird hobbies that they have. I mean, mechanical keyboards is a weird hobby for me to have. YouTubing is it's a fun thing that I like to do. So again, breaking down the barriers between the people and the audience, the more that we do that, the better and better engaged and happy the audience will be. So for me, that builds not just into what I do at Ski with Pete, not just what I do with my small business called One Up Keyboards, which I'll plug later, but also in my professional life. You know, again, that's the same relationship that I'm explaining to my clients as I try to encourage them towards live streaming as well. So.
Well, I know it's certainly been rewarding for us here. We're only 10 episodes into this Live at Epiphan show, but we've certainly been enjoying it. We've learned a lot from it. So thank you so much.
And everything else that goes along with it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we need to wrap it up, but we'll say thank you so much, Pete, for being here. So why don't we give you an opportunity to tell our viewers where they can keep track of everything that you've been up to.
See. It says Ski with Pete on it. So don't forget, if you'd like to ask me any questions, either about advertising or about live streaming or anything else, just reach out to me at skiwithpete@gmail.com. And of course, it'd be great if you press subscribe. I always like to say press like on the video that you're currently watching to let people know that what you're watching is relevant content and that you've enjoyed it. It also helps it get more views with the audience. So press like below, come over, check out my streams, check out my videos, and give me a shout if you can. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you.
Thanks so much, Pete.
Thanks for being here, Pete, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again sometime soon.
Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
I'm really looking forward to watching his videos when he upgrades to 4K. I think that's going to be really cool.
The 4K solder cam is,
that's going to be, I mean,
I don't know if anybody else has one of those.
You know, just that element of it, right? Putting a camera on a soldering iron, right? Those are those pieces of unique content that is going to help make a channel or a piece of you know, whatever stand out, right? Like, who's doing that? Nobody's really doing that. So finding those little unique pieces to throw into the mix of your content to try and, you know, just do something different. And with live streaming, there's so much you can do. You could start with the one camera, you can go to the 5, you can do these little, so it's really cool. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to see what Pete does when he upgrades to the 4K stuff. But that's pretty much going to do it for this week. As Pete, of course, said, like, subscribe, follow on all the various different social platforms. And, you know, next week we'll have some interesting topics as well. We're trying to decide what we're going to do. And part of that is because we're leading up to InfoComm at the beginning of June in Orlando, Florida. So that's our next big show. And there's a lot of planning going on surrounding that. And that does, you know, interesting enough, throw a little bit of the wrench in the gears of planning your live streaming content as you try and figure out where you can slot things in surrounding these other real world events. So keep your eyes out during InfoComm. We have a lot of cool information coming on upcoming Epiphan products. So that'll be coming during that show. So again, once again, any suggestions you have or comments you have, put them in the box there, or send us an email, live@epiphan.com. That'll do it for this week, I think. I'm George.
I'm Dan.
And we'll see you next week, Thursdays, 3 o'clock.
So long.